Hey guys, I just got off with Nicolle Wallace where we were doing a double Bulwark feature, both me and Tim on in the same hour. We talked about how Trump is tanking the economy on tariffs. We talked about crazy Laura Loomer. Think you guys are going to love it. Check it out right now.
Tim, we were talking before the break about all of the seats put into motion. The Florida races aren't getting as much press. Well, nothing's getting as much press as it deserves because of the sort of volume of chaos that Trump does. But the Wisconsin seat, obviously vitally important, the liberal winning the seat on the state Supreme Court. But in a normal political climate, Democrats swinging to ruby red districts where no one spent any money. This is just pure voter sentiment. 13, 15, 17 points would be news all over the world.
Yeah, it's hard to break through in the news environment when the president is tanking the global economy for no reason at all, just kind of because he likes the word tariff. So yeah, that's gonna kind of crowd other things out. But look, yeah, it would be bigger news. And what happened? Usually the off party does well, right? And off your election.
Not 71 days in.
But right. And at that scale, and if you're looking at these Florida districts, talk about ruby red. And it's the Panhandle, it's Floribama.
Yeah.
It's Matt Gaetz' seat in Floribama, yeah. And then it's Daytona Beach, over there, and Waltz's seat. These are red. This is red America, and they gained about 16 or 17 points between them, the two Democratic candidates, without really a lot of campaigning happening. There was a little bit, but to me, and I think the biggest takeaway, obviously, is, and that was all before the market crash today, 1,700 points. So I think there's huge opportunity for Democrats. I like that you put up that list.
Let me explain the list. Yeah. Let me explain it. Okay, put the list back up. There are 38 seats that were decided by a lesser margin than the swing on Tuesday.
Yeah. And so some of those seats aren't seats that there have been competitive races in a while.
Right.
And to me, I think that there are a lot of folks out there that are like, what can I do? What can I do? Who are very upset about what's happening. And you can protest, you can call your congressman, and you should do that. But one thing I've been trying to focus on the Bulwark pod is telling people either themselves or helping find others, encourage them to run in a lot of these districts. And this is just a huge opportunity for Democrats, not just in the House, but in state House races and state rep races, where they could very well win in very surprising places in 26, and that might have ramifications for years to come. I mean, I'm in Louisiana now with Mayor Landrieu there. Just this last week, there were these ballot initiatives that the Republican governor was putting forth. He lost all of them in a landslide. And it wasn't really because of anything on the merits of the ballot initiatives. It's because people are pissed. People are pissed for what's happening, and the people that are pissed turned out to vote against it. And so you're seeing it in a lot of very red places right now.
Sarah Longwell, we talked, I feel like, heading into November and coming out of November, so much of what Maga has in terms of a grip on the voters is a vibe that they'll be richer, that they'll be freer, that the red hat will somehow sort of transfer some of Trump's gilded, golden stuff onto them. Trump has done, I think, three things this week. One, proven that that is not the case. He only has a 30% approval on whether anyone will ever be able to afford anything gold or anything else. And he's also, with the callousness of all of it, saying things aren't going to go down, they're going to go up. He's lost credibility, I would think, among some people that he ever cared at all. What are you starting to see in talking to voters? What's breaking through?
Well, look, here's what I know from listening to voters now for years, which is Donald Trump's carefully curated impression, through his years on The Apprentice for voters is that he's a businessman. And so I hear it over and over and over again when people say, look, I don't like his personality, or, I don't always like the way he behaves this way or that, but he's a businessman and I think he's going to lower prices. I think he's going to do good things for the economy. And so right now what you're seeing is Donald Trump taking a knife to the mythology that keeps him above water with people. And so many of the voters, look, Donald Trump has a base of voters, maybe 32% of people, who they will have to be living on the street before they will admit that Donald Trump has ruined the economy. But there is another class of voters who just voted for Donald Trump because they were mad about inflation and they were mad about how high prices were. And so you're starting to hear people really worry about the fact that Donald Trump doesn't seem to be paying attention to the economy, that is not what he is focused on. And it's starting to come up even in groups that are very supportive of him, and that they say, I like what Elon's doing. I'm still optimistic, but even those people will express concern about the potential of tariffs. And obviously I haven't talked to anybody since the tariffs went into effect, but I know from listening to people that they are deeply price sensitive, and they were already in a place where they were hurting. It's one of the reasons they didn't vote for Joe Biden. These are not MAGA people. These are just consumers who wanted things to be cheaper. And Donald Trump raises prices on them. They will abandon him very fast.
So, Sarah, you've come bearing gifts. This is some sound from your focus group before the tariffs, talking about economic hope streams and anxieties.
Right now, I'm in the market. I want to buy a new car, but I'm scared because with the tariffs right now, what's going to happen? I don't want to say it's going to hit me, but it's going to come to the consumer some way or another. I mean, everything you buy, is overseas from somewhere. Bringing everything to the States would be great, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Like, I work on the automotive sector, and the tariff is going to hit them big. Like, it might be 1 month down, but it doesn't matter for automotives because you can't actually move the factory overnight. So it's a lot to take in because it will impact like lots of people's job and my job.
So, Sarah, tell us who these folks are and what's significant about their tariff anxiety specifically.
Well, they're Trump voters. They're 2024 Trump voters. And look, this is the thing about voters and tariffs. Voters understand tariffs. There are a lot of complex economic arguments that people will have, and sometimes consumers aren't going to tap in on them. Tariffs are one thing that Americans just get in their bones. They know that we get a lot of stuff from overseas. Lots of people work adjacent to different manufacturing sectors where they know that they're importing things. People understand that cars, steel, housing, they get it. And so the tariff issue is so interesting because it's one of those things that Trump runs on. He's explicit about the fact that he wants to do this. And voters who like him, though, or who want to like him, will sort of wave off as though, well, he won't really do that because we all know how bad this would be. Like, somebody will keep him from doing this, or we'll just do it, in some strategic way instead of this insane blanket way in which they are also lying, interestingly enough, about sort of how these were chosen and why. And it's chaotic. There's no real strategy behind it other than, as Tim said, him just loving the word tariffs. And so voters are not going to be fooled by this. They already know exactly how much everything costs at the grocery store and across the supply chain. They understand it. They feel it. They were already in a place where it was a pain point. And so they are not going to like this. There might be the hardest core MAGA people out there swinging to defend this, but most consumers are not going to like it.
When you look at the Republicans, this is the saddest part of the story, but perhaps the most important. The reason we're here is because I keep thinking of this John Mulaney I mentioned in the last hour. Have you seen that there's a horse in the
hallway?
Horse in the hospital.
So
it'll
good.
leave eventually, but it doesn't belong in the hospital. And even the horse knows it doesn't. I mean, I'm not funny, so I won't do it any justice. But Mitch McConnell knew there was a horse in the hospital. And after January 6th, Mitch McConnell refused to ban the horses from the hospital. So to see Mitch McConnell dissent on Hegseth and I think RFK and last night on tariffs for Canada is interesting, but above all else, too little, too late.
It kind of just makes me mad, to be honest, right? Because they all knew better. They all know better. You could go through the list of everybody, people in this administration, Marco, Waltz, Elise Stefanik, all of them were against tariffs. None of them would have been for this random regime of tariffs. When Derek was laying that out in the last segment, he said we tariffed Fiji. I was like, how much more could bottled water get? It's already pretty expensive. I'm pretty worried about my Fiji water now. But they all know this, right? And I think that similar to the voters that they displayed in that clip, they kind of convinced themselves, they don't know how, just because of partisan derangement syndrome, they wanted it, it was wish casting, they convinced themselves that he wasn't going to do all that bad stuff, all that crazy stuff, he was just going to do the stuff they liked. And that was delusional.
The fact that Donald Trump appears to be getting advice on matters of national security from a far-right, pro-white nationalism, 9/11 truther is not even the most disturbing part of the story I'm about to tell you. It's that Trump might actually be listening to her. First, the backstory. NBC News today confirmed with two sources much of what the New York Times first reported, that prior to yesterday's Tariff Palooza in the Rose Garden, Laura Loomer met with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. The topic of the conversation, firing members of the National Security Council. Mike Walls, the National Security Advisor and Signal chat enthusiast, was in the meeting defending his staff against what Laura Loomer was saying, that some members of the NSC were, quote, disloyal. Remember, Trump got rid of a career federal prosecutor last week, about an hour after Laura Loomer posted about him online. Well, this afternoon, NBC News is confirming that at least 3 national security aides were fired today, while other news outlets report that the number could end up being higher. Notable that this latest purge is happening a week and a half after Signalgate, a scandal for which no one has been fired that we know of, but one for which we learned this afternoon will be the subject of a DOD Inspector General's investigation involving Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Everyone is back. You know, if you're here, we were going to get to the Hegseth of it all. I'm the Laura Loomer, just for you.
I mean, that felt like a report from like a movie, like Don't Look Up or something. You're a fake, you get to play yourself in a movie. No, that's real. Laura Loomer is such a wild-eyed conspiracy theorist. I mean, she's an unapologetic. I think you had quotes in the intro. White nationalist, like, has said that about herself, like cheered the deaths of Muslims, said that like she hopes for more. I mean, like a just nasty person. I will say, when I was at a bar one time when Carrie Lake accosted me, and Laura Loomer did de-escalate, so I don't have any personal things against her. So I appreciated that. But she is
Are they friends?
Didn't seem like it. She's a crazy person, and anybody who doesn't believe it could just Google Laura Loomer crazy or just look at her X feed if they wanted to get a sense for this. The fact that she is in the White House talking to the president saying you should fire people who are in charge of national security, and he apparently said, okay, Laura, great, and fired a couple of people who are in his National Security Council or support the National Security Advisor, and that's how the country's being run. And we have a Fox and Friends weekend host that is running the military, so it shouldn't be that surprising. But I think that it is really just important to like marinate on that the people with power in the White House or outside the White House are like these extreme fringe conspiracy theorists that have big followers online, and that they can dictate who is in charge of our country's security, your family's security. And just on this point, one other thing, over at the DOJ today, they had a briefing at the Department of Justice, and it was like Bannon, Benny Johnson, and it was just a whole rogues gallery of Loomer-esque weirdos that were like having a briefing at the DOJ about the politicization of our government. So, Justice Department, national security decisions are being decided by MAGA conspiracy bloggers. So that should help you sleep at night.
Sarah, again, I sort of want to widen the aperture here to the many, many conversations we had about the generals and how impactful their warnings about Donald Trump's, really, they weren't about his policies or his politics. They were about his indifference, maybe, to long-held beliefs and norms about the rule of law, about keeping politics out of the military. They've blown all that up gleefully over 71 days. Is that sort of seeping into the body politic?
Well, just really quickly, we knew that this term, if Donald Trump won, was going to be wildly different than his first term because those generals were there the first time. You were just asking in the last, segment why voters sort of didn't understand. And it's because, when you take your kids bowling and they're little, so they put up those little gutter things that when they
I put
roll
those
the ball
things
right
up.
The bumpers.
Right? The bumpers, right? The generals were like the bumpers. Donald Trump's first term was filled with career Republicans who acted like bumpers against all of his insane ideas and who protected him essentially from himself. And those bumpers are all gone. And so we are living in the gutter 100% of the time with people like Laura Loomer. And the fact is, no, it is not clear yet, I think, to voters until they feel the negative personal consequences from what Trump is doing. And I think the tariffs, I've started to hear it in the groups. And last time I was on your show was really the first time it had started to bubble up. It's the economic stuff. Even Doge, some people are nervous about it. They don't love Elon Musk, but people have to they have to touch the stove, right? They have to feel the negative personal consequences before they're really going to turn on him. And that's why I think the tariffs are one of the things that are really going to start shifting the environment for Donald Trump, because they will have real world negative impacts on people's wallets fast.
Hey, YouTube fam, if you want to support the Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave.